Having a different opinion to someone online is always going to leave you open for criticism and personal attacks. This game is good will leave you open to the anger from people that believe the game is horrible. This game is bad will leave you open to the anger from people that believe the game is fantastic. The purpose of the Worst Gacha Ever series isn't solely to criticize a game, nor is it to praise it unconditionally. Rather, this video series exists as a means with which to both critique and to complement various facets of a gacha game that I experienced over a set period of time, sometimes days, sometimes months. Hey, my name is Stix and welcome back to another episode of Worst Gacha Ever. If you enjoyed this series, make sure to like the video, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel, hit that little bell notification because YouTube told me that if you don't, well, your RNG will be terrible next month. Oh, and make sure to check out the last episode in this series at the end of the video. Before we go any further, I just want to take a moment here to thank all of the absolute chads and chadettes that support this channel via Patreon. You're all freaking legends. Seriously, each and every single one of you. I would offer to give each of you a kiss, but I suffer from severe intimacy issues. Additionally, if you want to stay up to date with all the latest MMO, gacha, and gaming news, take a second here to follow Mrs. Stix and I over on Twitter. We tweet daily. Grimlight is a brand new RPG that launched earlier this month on July 6th. Now, I use the term launched very lightly here, as while the game did indeed become available to players publicly on July 6th, they had to revert their game back into a beta state due to a severe lack of preparation. Severe server issues caused the game to be unplayable for an extended period of time, significantly inhibiting the potential success of the game. Now, as is evident, taking a look several weeks later, the game is sitting at 4 stars out of 4,500 ratings on the Play Store and 3.7 stars on the App Store. I've been playing the game for the last 2 weeks, and admittedly, it is significantly more difficult than I had envisioned it being upon first inspection. I feel like up until chapter 4, you're in a long, drawn-out tutorial where it's impossible to lose a fight, to not really 3-star a stage. However, upon reaching chapter 4, you're hit with an incredible difficulty spike that seemed to have come out of nowhere. My waifus were always above the level requirement for each chapter. They had decent gear. Most of them were awakened. Chapter 0 through 4 were an absolute breeze that required no forethought, no strategy. You'd set up your team and you let the AI handle everything without fear. And while that's how you do it in chapter 4 as well, the fear is most definitely there. Half the stages I've done are impossible for me to 3-star at the level that I am at, even though I am at the maximum level I can be at. I'm aware there are a multitude of reasons as to why it is as difficult as it is. Gear not being upgraded enough, synergy between units being inefficient, not enough awakened heroes, again, numerous reasons. And don't get me wrong, I'm not sitting here complaining about this difficulty before some of you jump to the conclusion that I am. On the contrary, I'm not only impressed by, but also highly entertained by the realization that more is required of me personally to successfully continue clearing content and progressing through the game. Difficulty is not something that you often come by in mobile games, so when you do, when you're left with overcoming an obstacle, a challenge, it's more fulfilling. Now, unlike a lot of you, I feel like my daily routine when it comes to the game is fairly basic. I log in and immediately redeem any of the daily login rewards. I see the red exclamation point next to the missions, and my OCD gets the better of me, all but requiring I click it and cycle through the options, claiming the daily, the weekly, and the lifetime rewards. I then check my mailbox. Most of the time, nobody sends me anything because I have no friends, but sometimes I am left surprised. I go on to attempt to summon new waifus and husbandos, seeing how much of each currency I currently possess. Some days I don't have enough, some days I have too much. So I'll attempt to summon new units, I'll attempt to summon new gear, neither of which I ever get particularly lucky with. Then I realize I probably should have done that before clearing my daily and weekly missions, as I now have to claim them once more. After failing to get any waifus that I really wanted, I come to the realization that I should probably be leveling them, upgrading their gear more, generally increasing their base statistics so I don't continue to get stuck every new stage in Chapter 4. I begin leveling them and immediately realize that I'm out of resources, either XP stones or money. It's always one of the two. So I have to go over and grind the corresponding dungeon to acquire additional resources. Thankfully, you have the option of toggling up to 20 attempts at once. This typically takes only a few minutes, then I can go back to upgrading them as I had originally intended. I then sit there for a moment looking at the red exclamation points that have reappeared for the third time, contemplating why I even bother clicking them until I'm done playing for the day. And yes, this actually genuinely happens every day. 3-4 times in 15 minutes, I click back to and then continue to claim rewards. I'm really that thick. After proceeding to claim them for the third or fourth time that day, I then make my way to the story where I proceed to, in Chapter 4, continue to get my ass beat, failing to 3-star the damn stages because they continue to get progressively more difficult. And that is my general day playing this game. Now, there are other things that you can do, other dungeons to do for additional resources. You can go back to previous chapters and clear them on a harder difficulty. There's a guild system, a functional PvP arena, although I participated in it a few times and I just kind of face rolled every opponent, unfortunately. Now, I don't want to make assumptions here, but I feel like that's probably the state the arena is in. You either face roll or you get face rolled. Not that that's really any different in other gacha games though, right? When has PvP balance in a mobile game ever been a focus for developers? Honestly, there isn't a whole lot about Grimlight that other games don't already do and do better. The narrative is also pretty basic, as the vast majority of gacha games are. The graphical style is actually gorgeous and interestingly not overly sexualized like a lot of gacha games are these days. Waifus vary quite a bit, but they're all mostly timid in appearance, dainty and small. They're based off of fairy tales like Cinderella, like Rapunzel, Alice in Wonderland. You have Aurora from Sleeping Beauty, and they each take the form of a specific role archetype. We have melee DPS, we have melee tanks, range DPS, and range support, at least from what I could tell based off of the characters that I've recruited up until this point. The game functions much like a lot of gacha games these days. You have various chapters, and each chapter has a number of missions, stages consisting of 3 waves of enemies in succession. Knowing your character's role and formulating a game plan based around that and their strengths and weaknesses is integral to your continued success. I'm always terrible with this though, so I ended up opting for just a healer, 3 tanks, melee, and range DPS. You can't really go wrong with that, right? Well, evidently you can, as I've had immense difficulty in Chapter 4. Combat is pretty simple. You have a base formation, you deploy your units however you like, and they move in a horizontal line, attacking whoever is on the layer that they're placed down on, before moving to whichever enemy remains. You can opt to manually use your abilities, or you can let the AI handle it for you. There's really no difference from what I could tell, so I just let the game autoplay for me while I worked. This game does require some attention, but significantly less than in other games. With regards to the gacha and how fair it is, from what I've noticed personally and what I've found online, the game is both pretty generous and simultaneously unfriendly for free players. 5-star characters for permanent banners have a 3% chance of being obtained, which is admittedly relatively high, and is admittedly also why I have so many 5-star waifus, honestly. Limited banners rate up characters have a 1.5% chance of being obtained, and currency for these are fairly scarce. There are options available to aid with this though, in the form of a lifetime pass that costs $15 and rewards you with 5 pulls per week for the permanent banner, or the monthly card and the battle pass, which equates to roughly in total 200 pulls per year. It is worth noting, however, that pity is at 100 pulls, so in theory, you could ultimately pay $120 per year to get a couple guaranteed characters, which, while useful for people who can afford it, doesn't really seem worth the price to me. There's also a weapon banner with weapon upgrades requiring duplicates to successfully refine them up to 5 times. That sounds like something that I would love to waste my time and my money on. And yes, I'm being facetious. So, the gacha is both acceptable and horrible at the same time. Honestly, I don't really have any complaints with the game other than the fact that it just feels kind of generic. It is a gorgeous game, it has some fun gameplay, there's a variety of things to do, husbandos and waifus to collect, but it just kind of feels emptier than other games that I've played recently. And I can't quite put my finger specifically on why that is. Overall, this game does carry the potential to be an incredibly fun game. I just feel like, having played other better games that are exactly like this, with more content, with more personality, more flavor, I can't really find myself ever dedicating time to it. Is Grimlight the worst gacha game of 2022? Hardly. It had a rocky start, it is pretty basic, sure, but otherwise it is a solid game. Now, if you're looking for the previous episode in the Worst Gacha Ever series, you can find that via this video right here, or if you're looking for a list of confirmed gacha games coming this year, then this video over here has you covered.